Hello, this is Mike Kaufman, the author of the Motor Oil Bible, and you are watching part 6 of my top 4 reasons not to use synthetic oil video series. And before we continue with part 6, I would like to take care of the necessary disclaimer. Unfortunately, it is necessary for me to issue a disclaimer indicating that the information I'm providing to you in this video is for entertainment purposes only. By watching the remainder of this video and/or putting into practice any of its recommendations, you are releasing me from any and all liability that may result. Although I am a professional in the area of lubrication and filtration, you are advised to research these issues fully before deciding to implement any of my suggestions, and your decision is ultimately your own and releases me from all liability. Now again, this is part 6 of a 7-part series, and if you haven't seen parts 1 through 5 yet, feel free to click the little triangle to the right of this video, or if you're not already on the MotorOilBible.com website, visit that website address which is listed below, and you will have access to all of the currently available videos in this series, as well as potentially a couple other ones that I've thrown in for good measure. So in part 6, we're going to move on from the topic of older vehicles and low mileage drivers to a discussion of the relative benefits of using synthetic motor oil in vehicles that are being leased. So if you happen to be an individual who leases vehicles, or you know someone who is, this may be some information that would be pertinent to you. Fuel economy. Is that a benefit to somebody who's leasing a vehicle? Well, in my opinion, probably not so much. In part 4, we determined that improved fuel economy isn't really a major benefit to be gained for low mileage drivers considering a switch, who may be considering a switch to synthetic motor oil. And since leased vehicles typically have mileage restrictions attached to the contract, most individuals who are leasing their vehicle are low mileage drivers. It's just the nature of the individuals who lease vehicles. So based on that fact, then fuel economy really isn't going to be a significant benefit for them, just as it's not for low mileage drivers. And if you're not sure about that fact, go back and watch the previous parts in this series, and I'll explain to you why it really doesn't come out in the wash in terms of the cost benefits. So what about extended oil drain intervals? Well, nope, not really. The time limit placed on your recommended oil drain intervals will restrict the benefit that you receive from using an extended drain oil. And you might ask, well, what time limit? What are you talking about? And what I'm talking about here is that low mileage drivers, which again people who lease their vehicles typically are, they will have much more fuel and water buildup, condensation buildup in their oil because of their driving habits, which generally is going to result in a more frequent need to change their oil to avoid potential corrosion within the engine. And basically what it comes down to is this. When an engine is cold, typically the pistons within the cylinder are contracted just a bit. As the engine warms up, they expand a little bit, and generally what happens then is you get a better ring seal. But when the vehicle is first started, the ring seal isn't typically as good. And while the engine is cold, you're getting a lot of fuel that blows by the rings into the crankcase. And so as a result, you're getting fuel in your oil. In addition to that, if you're a low mileage driver, that typically means you're taking short trips, and you could potentially be getting condensation buildup in your oil as well. And since you don't ever really get your engine to the point where the temperature rises high enough to burn off the water and whatnot, then it just simply sits in the oil and causes acid buildup. And as that acid builds up in there, the acid-fighting additives in your oil are used up. And when they get to the point where they've been completely used up, then your oil needs to be changed. And so the point is there's a time limit, because people who put very limited mileage on their vehicle are only going to get so far or so long before the acid fighting ability of the oil is basically nil. And at that point it is necessary to change the oil in order to avoid corrosion within the engine as a result of acid buildup. So there is a time limit that is placed on any oil change, and that's really an issue for low mileage and leased vehicle drivers. So as a result, the benefits really aren't as great. Low mileage drivers might save 2 or 3 oil changes per year, because if you really think about it, let's say you drive 10,000 miles per year running petroleum oil. Depending on your thoughts on the issue, if you're changing every 3,000 to 5,000 miles, then you're either going to have maybe 3 oil changes per year, or if it's every 5,000 miles, maybe you change twice a year. But truthfully, 6 months is a little bit long to go on petroleum oil. You really should stick to 4 months at the most. So typically, you're going to have at least 3 changes per year with petroleum oil. And if you go to synthetic, you might be able to go a full year without changing it, depending on what oil you use, or you might go 6 months. Either way, at the most you're going to save 2 or 3 oil changes per year. Contrast that with a high mileage driver who could potentially save as many as 4 to 8 changes annually, which is a lot more time and a lot more effort that they're saving for the expense. If they drive 25 or 30 or 50,000 miles, if they're using a severely extended drain oil like an AMSOIL or a NEO or something that'll go 25,000 miles, they might only have 1 or 2 changes a year. Whereas with petroleum, they could easily have 5 to 10 changes per year. So there's a lot of time and effort to be saved for a high mileage driver in that case. Now, there might also be, for somebody who's leasing their vehicle, there might be contract restrictions that limit extended oil drain practices. There might be written into your contract that the oil has to be changed, every X number of miles. Truthfully, I'm not entirely sure whether that happens or not. I don't know if that's legal or not, but it's a possibility. A lease is an extra added contract that you're taking on, so that's a possibility that may restrict your benefit as well. And what about engine longevity? It's been established already, and in plenty of other technical journals and whatnot, that the use of synthetic oil could very well extend your engine life to 300,000 or 400,000 miles. But quite honestly, why would you care? If you're leasing your vehicle, you're going to be turning it in within 3 to 4 years. It's just not an issue that's really going to benefit you. And lastly, there are some situations where you might actually receive free oil changes as a part of your lease or your agreement with a particular dealership. So at that point, moving to synthetic becomes an even more expensive proposition by comparison, because sticking to petroleum oil means you get free oil changes. If you go to synthetic, not only do you have to buy the oil, but you might actually have to pay for the oil change as well. So there's a pretty considerable jump in cost going that route. So, so why choose synthetic? Quite frankly, if you're leasing a vehicle, I really can't think of a good reason. It doesn't mean you couldn't use synthetic. I mean, you're welcome to do so. It doesn't matter to me, but I just don't really know that it makes a great deal of sense. So that pretty much wraps up this video. Part 7 is on its way. Remember, this is part 6 of a 7-part series, so check the playlist, see if there's any additional videos already ready to view. And if not, then expect part 7 to come soon. And it says here leased vehicles, but it won't be. It's a separate topic. So follow me through Twitter or Facebook or MySpace. All those options are available at MotoroLaBible.com. You can become a member of the blog. That's also an option, and any of those methods will allow you to be notified when future installments are released. And tell your friends and relatives, because every person that you bring to the site will also have an opportunity to get one of those 1,000 free copies that I'm going to be giving away as a part of this launch. And if they get a copy, they can give a copy to anybody they want. One copy, and that could be you. So if you get them to the site and you don't get a free copy, you might get a free copy through them. So spread the word about the book and the site, and I hope you get a free copy.